Hello, welcome to the portrait painting workshop. 4 weeks of portrait painting, and I'm going to facilitate you getting to a complete portrait. And I'm also going to provide the sitter for you, or rather, a guy called Bruno Salvadori is going to, because Bruno Salvadori is a photographer on a site called Pexels that does a lot of very good quality photos that you can download free. Now, you can tip the guy if you like, because they take PayPal, but you can't see it very well here. But I have a link in the description, which, if you click on the link, it brings you over to Pexels and you don't have to sign up or anything. And I think that opens the link in a new window. So you'll still be here with me and over there in a new window as well. But you can download images instantly from there. And I went onto Pexels because it's one of my favorite sites whenever I have to use an image for something to look for images. And it's handy because we can't all afford to pay a sitter, but we can afford to tip this guy for his use of his photos. And the photo is very dark here, but if you download the highest resolution of the photo that he has on offer, if you then open up your photo on your computer, you can see that there's a beautiful range of uh, very subtle color transitions and everything in this, as well as a very interesting model and pose. And what I propose to do is um, we're going to work from this virtual sitter that we have. And in today's session, we're aiming to do this. We're aiming to come out at the end of the session with a finished tonal drawing that we are then in the next session, and there are 4 sessions in this to complete your portrait. The next session on next Friday, same time, 2 o'clock, Greenwich Mean Time, GMT, um, we're going to start painting. But you have to do some preparation before you start painting. So we're going to have 3 sessions of painting and 1 session today when we get our act together with the drawing. So that's step 1, to go over, have a look at that photo and download it. And it's the same photo that showed up in my thumbnail. And I have it here in front of me, not because I'm going to work from the photo, but if I'm explaining something to you about doing this drawing, that I have something in front of me that I can refer to. But the reason that you're not working from the drawing, from the photos, just printing out the photos and, or, um, going to some sort of photo booth in a chemist shop or something and getting them printed out is you can't really, it comes out a bit dark. You can't see the full range of tones and color and everything. And it's really nice if you're on a laptop rather than a phone to be able to zoom in and out of the image as you're working. And the higher the resolution of the image, the better chances you have of getting a really good portrait. So that's where we're trying to get you to at the end of these 4 1 hour long sessions. So in 4 hours, we're trying to get you from this starting point today to a finished portrait. So if you're somebody who has tried doing portraits before and gets stuck at certain points or something, you might find this very helpful. Or if you're somebody who's done successful portraits before, you might pick up a few tricks. Like I go off and I do workshops on things all the time. Workshops are great for um, doing things in. It's all, they're all about getting from point A to point B. So how do we get from point A, wanting to do the portrait of this lady, to point B, having the thing done? Okay, so we know where we're going for today's session. We want to end up with a finished drawing so that this drawing can then be transferred onto a canvas or onto a paper or onto a wooden panel or whatever you're going to paint on. Okay, so it's moving from the drawing to the painting. So even that might be not some people's usual way of doing things, but there are a lot of advantages to working this way. So I had that completed already because I wanted to show you where I'm trying to get you to. But now I want to show you the steps to get you there. Okay. And things that would be handy to have materials wise, I'm going to show you those as well. Now, if you don't have them to hand as we're here talking and you say, oh, I don't have, for example, tracing paper, don't worry about it because you can watch this video again afterwards um, with your materials, or you can actually survive it without some of the materials. Tracing paper is one of those things. It's pretty handy to have for a few reasons, which I'll explain, but it's not absolutely vital. You could get away without using it. The other thing that I use quite often, this is actually thing typists used to use, and I call it carbon paper. It's got powdered carbon on one side, and it's for tracing something. So obviously you've probably figured it out already that that is the way that we are going to get our finished drawing onto the canvas or the paper or the wooden panel or whatever you're painting on when we're finished. So this drawing is going to be traced, and that saves you a lot of work of trying to draw it out again. It's going to be traced and then transferred via the carbon paper onto a new sheet of paper or board or whatever. But we'll just get you to the point today of getting the drawing. So if you don't have the tracing paper today, don't worry about it. It is handy for another couple of little things along the way, but as I say, not right. Anyhow, and if you need to watch this video again at certain points, the video is going to be around for a while. So, you can go back to any bits you get stuck on. But in theory, right, the quickest you could do this probably is within the hour. You could actually work along now and actually get it done within the hour if you wanted to. But you do have a week between live streams. So, don't worry about it taking too long. It's not going to take too long, but try and get it to the point of being ready for next week's session by next week. So we'll say you have a week to do this, okay, at the longest. Because what tends to happen is, I don't want to put constraints on you, but what tends to happen is that somebody loses interest in a project if they don't keep in contact with it. So even if you're somebody that only has maybe an hour during the week somewhere, if you have a half an hour one day and then, you've a 3-day break or something, and then you have another day you can work on something, that's great if you're doing it all within the same week. But it's a bit different if you leave something for 3 weeks. You're less likely to finish it, don't you find? That's what I find anyway. So you could do it in an hour. You can take the whole week to do it. Suit yourself time wise, but it can be done on your own schedule. So here are the steps. Okay, we have our photo, and our photo is going to be on a laptop screen rather than looking at it on your phone. I know a lot of people look at things on their phone, but when you look at the layout of the original photo, you'll realize that the layout is in this nice, what we call landscape view. And landscape view is, you can turn your phone sideways, but um, just getting the kind of size and zooming in and out and everything, it's not as handy, I don't think, on a phone. I think you're maximizing your comfort of doing this portrait if you're working from, a desktop or a laptop and you're just using whatever native program you usually open photos in. You've usually got a zoom tool there that allows you to zoom in and out very easily, So it's making it a lot easier to work with. it's important for the first thing that we're going to do, because the very first thing we're going to do, and have it in kind of steps here. Here's step one, right? Step one is you're going to do a thumbnail or several thumbnails, which is just a thumbnail is just a small sketch from something. So you're doing a small sketch from this original uh, photo. Now you can see that my thumbnail is a completely different shape from the original photo, and there's a reason for that. It's because I had decided, because I've done loads of portraits, right? I have decided, um, and if you want to see an example of, I'm just thinking I have a few new people here. So if you wanted to see an example of one of my recent portraits, there is a video called Another Portrait on my channel. You could have a look at that. It's a time lapse of me doing a little small portrait. Um, on looking at this photo, I sort of thought to myself, oh, I see what's really interesting about this photo to me, right? And there were a lot of really interesting things in the photo. There's there are beautiful things happening on the left. There's a lovely, it's very browny color on the screen here, but on the original photo, when you open it and have a look at it, there are some lovely purpley bluey colors going on here, and there's a lovely recession going back with uh, windows all receding back down a hallway, and it's really interesting, both color wise and shapes wise. Then we've got the model who is slightly off center in the composition. Then we've got this bit of wall, which is a lovely kind of rest after the busyness of the model. And then we've got this window, which creates a little dialogue between her and what's happening. So it's really, it could as easily be called a figure in an interior as it could a portrait, because it includes hands in it as well, and body down to kind of below hip level, and an interior, doesn't it? And then over on the right, there's this lovely dark area, but I wasn't as interested in that, and I said, I think I want to do something different with this. So the thumbnail, or thumbnails plural, is where you play around with what you think you want to do with the composition. So that is step one, working out your composition. And if we just take a quick uh, look at how this process goes, basically it's not like you're, drawing an outline first. You're just drawing a very rough version of the figure, very rough, and making generalizations about the figure. So the figure's about here in the picture, okay? And just looking at it that way. So you're not going for a likeness or anything like that. And then we've got a window over here. So you're spending a lot of time looking at the photo while you're drawing this thumbnail. And you're also going to be doing some shading in the thumbnail. Mine doesn't have an awful lot of shading because I knew what I wanted to do and I was going bigger. But to do the shading, if you get, this is like a graphite pencil, but if you just have an ordinary pencil, it's fine too. You have the pencil slightly on the side, and you can do the shading um, roughly, with darker areas done in crosshatch shading style. Is very fast way to basically cover ground. So the thumbnails are a very fast thing, okay, where you're sort of having a getting to know the sitter time, okay. This is you getting really into uh, what's happening in that photo. So you're finding out what it is that you love about that photo, and examining it in terms of tone, and saying, oh, I love this tone happening. And then as you're drawing something else, you might be saying, I don't find this as interesting, right? So you're finding out as you're drawing what bits are of interest to you and what bits aren't that interesting to you. That helps you figure out where you want your edges in the photo. And that's why I ended up with this kind of composition, which is a portrait composition rather than a landscape layout. And there's a bigger version of the original thing. I wasn't so interested in over here, this big dark space. And I wasn't even interested in going all the way up to the edge of the window and having any of that dark space. But I found this very interesting because although you can't see it in this photo, um, I liked the light and shade and I liked the recession into the distance. I thought it had a very classical feel to it and everything. And in fact, by the time I arrived at the final drawing, which I'll just show you again, you can see that quite a lot changed about what I decided to put in the picture. And all that happened because I was just getting very into it and connecting with that subject and the model, but also the interior. And it was stimulating my own creativity. So, what you're wanting to do in a portrait is express how you feel about the subject of the portrait and the whole environment of the portrait. Not You're not working on copying a photo, or if the sitter's there in front of you, you're not necessarily copying nature as such. You're expressing your reaction and your perception to nature, you see. It's all about your perception of the thing. It's not about, oh, I have a very good photo, I'm going to copy it. And you can see that the shape of these, I've done them as arches. So it's kind of weird because there's a window here which is not an arch shape, but these are quite classical looking in the background, and I like those kind of shapes. And some things about the sitter have changed as well. Like she doesn't have a flower in her hair in the original, and she isn't holding anything, and the position of her hands has actually slightly changed as well. And even the position of her hip, I've changed it slightly, and I have the hip kind of thrust out slightly more. And in fact, I have the head a very, very slightly bigger scale than it was in the original. And this is why, although we have the use of tracing paper, we don't just blow up the image and then trace it off a screen or something, which you could do quite successfully. uh, this is why we don't bother doing that, because A, we want to learn to draw because drawing skills are very important in a painting, but B, we also want to have a portrait that's very unique and is about how we see the world, how we interacted with that sitter, and what our response was to um, to that photo that we're working from. So, what did it evoke for you? But we are also obviously working from the particular, which is there are anatomical things that we do want to get correct because we don't want it to be kind of totally surrealist picture. We want to have it believable in some sense because it's a figurative painting. So it's great to have something high resolution to work from. So anytime you're doing a portrait, you're going to be looking for, if you're using photographic references, you're going to be trying for high resolution so that you're not missing information. Okay, so how do we get that information down? We've had the first stage of doing a few thumbnails and deciding what kind of a composition we like, what bits of the thing are exciting for us. And we've ended up with a thumbnail that we've chosen as the layout that we want. So now we want to work from that thumbnail up to a bigger version of the drawing that has the final composition, the way that we want the final painting to look. Now, it might not necessarily uh, still be at the correct scale. And in fact, um, was mine at the correct scale? I do actually show you how to scale up something, right? This is another little trick. There's a few little tricks you have to know for this. One of the tricks is um, uh, if you're going to include this bit in the background, you're going to need to know a little bit about perspective. And the other day I made a little short video about what I was calling single point perspective, but I see a lot of people call it 1 point perspective. And this technique allows you to draw things like this front window and the other windows um, in a way that visually makes sense as they recede away from you. So that's one of the things you're going to need to do in order to do this second drawing. Didn't matter as much in the thumbnail because the thumbnail is stage one of just, sitting around drawing several drawings and getting a feel for how you feel about the subject. Now we're going to try and get things a little bit more accurate. So if I show you how to place background things and how to anatomically place things, it's going to be helpful, isn't it? So just to give you a very quick rundown on the how you do that perspective in the background, that's if you decide to put in these windows at all. You might decide you want that whole section dark. That's okay. You might decide you don't want the window in it. That's okay. You don't have to do any of that if you don't want to. But the way it's done basically is, let's say these are the windows, whatever shape you decide to make them. This is how it works. If that was the closest window here, this window on this side, now that window relates to all the other windows on the other side of the model. And they're all in a straight line. So those lines, if you can get the angle, and it's handy if you have a ruler for this, if you can get the angle of the original photo and figure out what angle that's at on the page, you have the thing kind of sussed out. So there's the angle there of the window. So that angle transferred onto your sheet of paper would be a line like that, wouldn't it? So you can see how you could get that from the screen. And this is where your tracing paper might come in handy, because sometimes it's very hard to see those things and you're having to move from a screen to down here. So you could hold up a piece of tracing paper in front of your screen, draw the line, and then bring it down onto your page. As long as the bottom of your tracing paper was straight on the screen, you're going to have the angle of the line correct, aren't you? But the way that it works, so obviously that line is steeper than that line was, but the way it works is you go up to the top of the window, and you can't see the top of the nearest window, but you could see the top of the other windows, and you line up the top with the top of those. And you will find that those points meet out in the distance. If you were going to show another piece of paper outside your composition, if you slotted in another sheet of paper, all those lines might join. And you might say to me, yeah, but it doesn't matter. I've only to do the top and the bottom line. So why do I care where they join? I'll just guess it. But actually, you've got this line to do as well. So that one you might possibly get wrong unless you know that that has to meet the point where the other two lines join somewhere in the distance as well at what's called the vanishing point. And that vanishing point happens along what you call the horizon line. Okay, so while you could guess at, you could get those two angles going okay, and then you could just guess the middle line. Um, you could use it as an opportunity to learn something about perspective as well if you didn't already know about perspective. And the thing about these workshops is that you don't know, because there are different people doing them, you don't know um, how much different students know about something. Who knows what, who's done, who's got what skills. One person might be brilliant at perspective, and then another person just as great at getting a likeness on a face. So, excuse me, please, if I'm talking to you like you never heard your perspective before, and you do know, because I don't know what you know, what you don't know. So let's move on to talking about the body. That's talking about this background, and you can see how I used it there for mine, for the line here. And my horizon line, that means, would be way off over there. And the top line, it doesn't matter for the window here, but it'd be way off over there as well. And then that line of the window is also respecting the vanishing point. It is headed towards that same vanishing point as the other outside lines. And I hope that makes sense. But if any of this stuff doesn't make sense, remember I have a comment section. You're quite welcome to ask me anything. Or, if you hop in, if you're on the live stream next week, even and you had questions during the week or things that didn't work for you, ask me in the comment section or ask me live. I'd be amenable to that, and that's what I'm here for. I'm here to help get you to do that portrait that you want to do. Now, another thing that's really helpful when you're doing that second drawing, the kind of really finished looking drawing that we're going to use to transfer onto our canvas or our paper. For me, it's going to be paper, is a grayscale version, which you should be able to do handy enough on your computer, because usually there's some kind of filter. Most software on computers, even if it's really simple stuff, will allow you to do a grayscale image. And the reason this is so handy is that it allows you to turn an image into just tonal values, so that you're splitting up the problem. You're not dealing with tone, shapes, lines, and color all at the same time. Now you're just dealing with tone. And tone is what you want to be concerned with in the drawing. We won't mind so much about the colour until we get to the painting. Although our choice of the sitter and the interior and everything was, I know I chose it for you, but when you're doing a portrait again yourself, um, they would be very important. Color is very important in, your whole interest in doing that sitter in that place rather than somebody else. But this breaks down the problem, you see, if you can do this. So for the drawing to work from a grayscale version, if you have two versions of your photograph, you've downloaded the color version, and then you save a copy of it, and you put a filter on that copy of it to make it a grayscale, you end up with this. And that's brilliant, because that's really easy to draw from, except you still have to be able to draw all the shapes. And this is where it can be tricky, because we don't just have a face to deal with. If we just had a face, life would be easy, because we could do our little method, and I've done videos on this before, how if we think of the head as an egg shape, we won't go too far wrong. And because this lady is to the side, she's an egg shape with, remember, um, a midline of